Andy, my dude, have you heard of the magical website builder known as Squarespace?
Ugh, not another Squarespace ad. I feel like every podcast is sponsored by them.
Hey, don't knock it till you try it. Yes, okay, it is overhyped, but actually it lives up to the hype. Squarespace is like a website fairy godmother. With a click of a button, your site transforms into a beautiful masterpiece.
A website fairy godmother? That sounds interesting. What makes it so magical?
Well, for starters, those slick templates make anyone look like a professional web designer. Pick one, customize the colors and fonts to match your brand, and voila. Plus, the drag and drop fluid engine is so easy, your grandma could build a site on Squarespace.
Well, she did knit me a lovely scarf last Christmas. Maybe website design is next.
Exactly. And when you're ready to sell your Nana's handmade scarves online, Squarespace has built-in e-commerce. Add a store with one click. Get flexible payment options. Then watch those sales roll in. And when she wants to teach others her steezy scarf skills, Squarespace's new courses feature is just the ticket. Nana can set up her curriculum and enrollments and payments in a snap and become the next e-knitting influencer.
Oh, wow, you really sold me with the grandma angle. Sign me up for that free trial.
Just go to thenextreel.com/Squarespace and transform your site into a beautiful Squarespace masterpiece.
Well, thanks, Pete. Even though it's overhyped, Squarespace actually sounds perfect for Nana's site's needs. Appreciate the warning on the ads, though. I'll brace myself next time I listen to a podcast.
Anytime. Let me know if you need any help getting that site up and running. Andy, can you believe we've almost hit 700 episodes of The Next Reel?
I know, it's crazy. And with all the other episodes in our family of podcasts, we are well over 1,200 episodes of movie conversation. It's really pretty amazing that we've gotten to have these in-depth movie chats every week for over a decade now.
And we couldn't have done it without our loyal community of film fans. Their support over the years has meant so much.
For sure. That reminds me, we should give the merch store a shout out. Buying shirts from thenextreel.com/merch is a great way listeners can continue to support the show. Plus, they get to sport our great designs.
Absolutely. I think sometimes folks forget we have a variety of shirts, mugs, phone cases, and more available. In fact, a great place to start is with a shirt sporting the Next Reel's logo.
We also have that classic Fast Times Spicoli Surf School tee, or the weirdly popular Rusty's European Tour shirt.
The one from National Lampoon's European Vacation. Why is that so popular?
Search me, but we have sold a ridiculous number of those. I guess there are a lot of Rustys taking trips to Europe?
We're always adding new designs based on movies we've covered, like our brand new design for a streetcar named Desire, featuring a streetcar named Desire. So if you want to rep your love of TNR and films, head to thenextreel.com/merch.
Every purchase helps us continue to have these weekly in-depth conversations. So visit thenextreel.com/merch today.
And as always, thanks for listening and being a part of the Next Reel community. We've got lots more great movie chats coming your way. This is The Next Reel, everybody. I'm Pete Wright, and that over there is Andy Nelson.
Hey, hey, hey.
And we spoil movies. Tonight on the show, there's water in the basement and the pilot light is out. It's Ocean's 12.
Yep. I want my money back. The money that your friend stole from me. $160 million with interest. I'm not the only person in the world looking for Ocean's 11.
Huh. We need a job. We need a high-paying job.
Well, now we're too hot to work anywhere in this country.
Look, it's not in my nature to be mysterious, but I can't talk about it, and I can't talk about why.
Ooh. I'd really like to play a more central role this time around.
Okay, I don't even understand what happened in there. What did I say?
Next time I see you, I'm arresting you.
Andy, I came to Ocean's 11 last week, if you remember, with a bit of an emotional set of baggage.
You were rather attached.
I was attached. I don't have the same baggage to this movie. So we're free. You should feel free that you can get away with this show with me without being accosted at any point.
Okay.
I worry a little bit that you may have some baggage.
You think I might accost you?
I think you might. Yeah. Where do you stand on this movie?
I have fun with this movie. I like it more than Ocean's 11. Still do after rewatching them both. Not a ton. In fact, well, we'll find out later how far apart they are in flick chart, but they're relatively close to each other. They, what I like about it is it feels fresh. Like the first film, I enjoyed some of the stuff going on. I liked it more this time because I really felt that connection to Tess and that kind of that storyline with Danny. Even though I didn't feel it was as developed as it should have been. In this film, what I really just latched onto is it felt like I didn't really know where I was going, and that was exciting. The first film, it always felt like I knew where I was going, and everything felt expected, and it felt like they were having fun with it, but everything was just expected. And sure, there were twists and surprises and stuff, but in this film, the twists and surprises were like real twists and surprises. Like I just, all of a sudden there's this Night Fox character, and then all of a sudden there's all these, different things that keep happening. It really kind of kept pushing into different directions that I never saw coming. And I ended up really enjoying it. And I think I liked it a little less actually, than I did the first time I watched it, but I still enjoy it and think it's a clever, albeit very different entry into the franchise.
So tomato. Where you say creative and clever, I say sloppy and disjointed. I have all the same sort of emotional attachment to the characters. I still really like the crew, and I'm attached to them. I find the execution of the story super sloppy, and I don't think it commits strongly enough in any particular direction. We meet Isabel in the very opening scene, and I love it. I love it so much. I love that setup. It's a setup on so many different levels, that we have this setup between Rusty and a relationship that we discover, hey, you know what? I get the feeling this is going to be Rusty's story this time instead of Danny's just out of prison trying to get his romance back. This is going to be Rusty. We're going to learn a little bit about Rusty's background. I love that. And then we don't see Isabel again for like 30 minutes. When in fact this is a lot of her story. I find it's so disjointed and so non-committal to these significant characters that I'm just never sure exactly what the movie wants me to fall in love with, and I hate that. I hate feeling like that it's Rusty's story. Oh, wait a minute. It's also Isabel is a story. She's in it. She's going to be important. Oh, wait a minute. It's a heist story, and it's a competition between two burglars, and we have that whole angle which comes in right in the middle. I find it's chaos. It is narrative chaos. Now, the movie floats for me because I really love how Soderbergh executes his film. I love him behind the camera. I love the way it's cut together, and I just enjoy watching it. But more as just sort of a work of charismatic art than of a narrative that I find I can invest in.
So you feel about like this as I do as the first one. So that's good.
Which I find so crazy.
I think it's funny.
So crazy.
I think it's really funny that you say all of that about about this one as far as Isabel and all this sort of stuff. But it's the same issue in the first film with Tess, and but it didn't seem to be as much of a problem for you.
No. It's really not. It's really not, and I'll tell you why. Tess was set up as the love interest, and we have a certain expectation of what the love interest is capable of doing. And I think while I walked out of that movie feeling like she was underused because I feel a strong affinity to Julia Roberts, I also recognize she's the love interest and she is secondary to the primary story. In this movie, they introduced Catherine Zeta-Jones as more than a love interest, right? She is a detective. She is solving crimes. She has spent a career finding thieves. And oh my God, her dad is the huge spoiler. All of that is roped into this on top of her being set up as the former love interest or as the love interest for Rusty. And that is too much baggage for the narrative of this story to maintain. There's just too much going on. I wanted her story. Our deep scene dive tonight, which we're going to talk about, should have come 15 minutes into the movie and should have anchored the film. That should have been the pivotal moment, and we should be anchored around her if this is her story. And it just wasn't.
Well, I mean, I can't argue with that element of it, but at the same time, I am going to argue in your defense of the first film, as I was just saying, because that story, it's such a weak film if all it is, okay, let's go steal this money. Oh, hey, we stole the money. That's what that movie is. And what a bore. Let me just tell you, it's so flat. There's nothing happening. There's no character arcs. There's nothing to that film. The only saving grace in that film is the fact that Tess actually ends up having a character arc. And she's the one who ends up changing over the course of the film because Danny guides her change. And that is the only redeeming feature about that film. That's the only reason I'd probably go watch it again.
It is a redeeming feature in the film. It is a great part. We are in violent agreement there.
Well, yeah, but it's just unfortunate that the whole film I mean, really, what is there to that film other than let's go rob this casino? Hey, we robbed a casino.
In a clever and charismatic way. It was entertaining to watch that.
Yeah, but there's no character change. There's no character growth. There's nothing happening in the movie. That is my biggest problem with it. And I know that people love it because it is so light and fun and fresh and zesty. But this one actually has more things happening in it. And that makes it a little more fun and exciting. And yes, I agree it has problems with Catherine Zeta-Jones' character throughout. And if she is supposed to be such a key character, it's a problem. But I feel like this movie actually is doing more things with a story that actually makes for a story where I'm like, hey, I don't know where this story is going. And that to me is exciting. Whereas the first film was like, well, they're going to go rob the casinos. Hey, they did it. Boring.
Not at all. No, you're nuts. You're clearly, have you changed your meds? Something is wrong. Look, I totally, I mean, we agreed to disagree last week, but this week you're going to start bringing up change characters. Catherine Zeta-Jones, I assume she's the one you see as a character who changes in this film?
Sure.
I think her change is nuts. It is totally delusional. It's whiplash. It is complete whiplash, her character. It is unearned whiplash when she falls back in love with Rusty and meets her father at the end with this weird setup that apparently we were supposed to really be interested in. I cared nothing for it. And then she shows up at the big party at the end. I felt like that was whiplash.
And I'm not saying it's not. Again, I'm not saying this film doesn't have problems, but what my problem is people who praise the first film and don't find any of the similar problems with that film that they do with this film, because that film has just as many problems. So if you're telling me that this film is not problematic, or if you're telling me the first film is not problematic and this film is problematic, then you're delusional because you're not seeing what is going on in the first film.
I feel like we saw completely different movies.
I completely agree that this film is full of problems, but I still find it at least doing something more unique than the first film did.
I think where I want to come down on this is you are right on all of those points, and that is a central part of why I find this movie so much more troublesome to watch, because it is trying so many unique things and wonderful things and going in wonderful different directions that it doesn't hold together as a unit. And that is the piece that I find super distracting.
What I think is funny is that, trust me, I completely understand that I'm in the minority with this movie. I know that everybody loves the first movie and the third movie, and this is the one that is like the dip that everybody suffers through when they have to go from 11 to 13. But for me, I'm just I'm one of those vocal few who feels that at least there's something unique here. And I don't worry, I completely get it. And yes, that's where we are.
Here's a thing that I find interesting. One of the complaints that I feel like we've heard, and some in our own Discord channel, was that building a team, the trouble that people have with the building a team sequence in this movie. And I will tell you that building a team in this movie is not something I have a problem with. Does that surprise you?
No.
Good, we're off to the races.
Yeah, I honestly, I have such a I never know what people are going to have problems with this one, because anytime I talk to people, it's always something different. So I guess
this is one that I really like, because it is replaced. Like usually we have in these heist movies, it's sort of table stakes that you're going to have building the team. We talked about building the team before, and here we are building the team. It's different here, and I think it's different in a really smart way. It's different because it's not these guys pulling together a team that we already know exists. In fact, the team is all spread all over the place. They're getting a manicure. They're doing their own thing. The team is accounted for by Terry Benedict going from person to person and telling them that they're on the hook for all the money that they stole, and him discovering them in all of these fantastic places. I really like that. I really like the way that plays out, and I think it reintroduces us to all these characters in a very smart and charismatic way. And in fact, I actually like them coming together for the first time and talking about all the money that they owe. I think that is a funny conversation, and it's a fun and funny way for us to get to know them again.
Well, and, I know there's been some complaint about the fact that, they say Ocean's 11 and that whole thing, and they're talking about it as Ocean's 11. And it is a little weird, but I think it makes for a really funny conversation. Like, I really like it when they're all getting all upset about, oh, it's Danny's. Well, where did it, become your thing? It made me laugh quite a bit.
And Linus, who comes to the defense of Danny, and ends up being such a punching bag for the duration of the film, which as a character bit, I think is actually really funny. Especially because he was coming off of the Bourne movies here, where he just is so like with it and on top of everything, and even in his search for identity, and for this film to have him be such a state of chaos, I think is really great. He's a strange character. I feel like his character is the one that took the biggest turn from the previous film. In the way that they were writing him and what they were kind of doing with his character. And it went down a road that I was like, I don't know who this guy is. It's such a strange character, because I know that he was like the new guy in the first film, and they bring him on because, I can't remember, it was recommended from his father, or they knew his father, or somehow they got connected with him. So there's that whole backstory of he's from a family of thieves, and here he is hired into this group. But then in this one, we've got this strange thing with Linus where he gets kind of offended when they're using the word freaky, and it's kind of creates this whole like weird thing about him. And it's like, what, I could never quite figure out what was going on with him in his mind as far as like the way that he was thinking about things. And that really kind of continues into the next one too. So it's a strange development that I don't know how fond of I am. Well, let me ask you, because this struck my mind. I'm interested in your opinion on this. Do you think that this sort of the sort of character nonsense that we get from Linus here, which I find funny, but I also think is a little bit out of place given the first movie, would this kind of stuff have been more appropriate in the first movie?
It would have been fine in this one if they had some of it in the first movie. And I think that's the thing, right, is like they changed this element of his character, and all of a sudden he's kind of like getting offended about strange little things like that. And it's kind of become a new part of his character that seemed strange to me.
Well, and then we get to, for example, the what was it, the Lost in Translation gag with Rusty and Danny and Matsui. And I thought that was just straight up silliness, and I felt like it was setting up Linus for to become a foil, like a foil and the buffoon, not just the innocent. So I was a little frustrated by that sort of stuff.
They do that to him in the first movie too.
Yeah, but it's not quite so. I don't know.
Well, because Clooney, they trick him into thinking that Rusty has Linus following Danny, only to reveal that they knew all along, and it was part of the whole thing when Danny pops up on top of the elevator.
Yes, I know, and I still feel like this, like in front of Matsui, actively pranking him in a scene that is otherwise not necessary, I found frustrating. Like they're doing it only to poison our opinion of Linus.
I think this is a consistent element across the board with all of these recent films, is that they have these scenes written into the film where there will be these conversations that are kind of just there just to be there and just to have fun. I talked about some of those scenes in the last movie that just feel like they're written, and that I think is very consistent here also, where there are scenes like that just feels like, oh, this will be fun, let's write this scene, and they write it, and it never stops feeling written.
Yeah, well, and we have the exact same scene that we talked about in the last movie, right? Where and I didn't have a problem with it in the last movie because it was fun and charismatic and original. And in this movie, I have a big problem with it. It's the exact same scene with Danny and Rusty. This time, Rusty's doing it, and I didn't like it. I did not like it. It was played.
Yeah, I mean they struggled with a lot of those elements in the franchise. I think it's just. I mean, they're trying to make it fun and light, and I think sometimes it hits and sometimes it doesn't. And I would say that that's pretty consistent for all of them.
I do. There are some other things I do love, though. I love the bleeping. Sorry, the bleeping in when we see Basher for the first time, and he's hanging out with his engineer. He's hanging out with Jared Harris, who is what a fantastic little cameo for Jared Harris fans. I thought that was great, and they keep having the I guess it's a phone ringing, but at just the right place for them to swear, and I thought that was a super funny gag.
Well, and it was just funny because they're talking about like having to bleep their song or whatever, and here they are getting bleeped. So it played pretty well. I mean, a lot of fun little cameos, like Jared Harris is there. Topher Grace returned in his little bit here, which was funny. I love him saying, "Oh, I totally phoned in that Dennis Quaid movie." You know, just I mean,
so good.
They have a great use of the cameos when they get the opportunity.
The Malloy twins are fantastic. They're back with Affleck and Khan, and they have their little guessing of the age bit, which is super funny and charming. Again, some of these little character elements that we get between the main crew are really great. And then we have these things. The central gag toward the end of the movie is they're trying to steal this egg, and some of the guys have been arrested. They're split up. We only have 3 of them left, and so they need some help. And they call Julia Roberts to play, or they call Tess, I should say, to impersonate Julia Roberts and get her into the museum so they can steal the egg. And there she sees Bruce Willis sees her. Bruce Willis is also playing himself, and shenanigans ensue, I guess.
I think it's actually kind of funny. It's kind of a clever way to kind of play that scene, but I still have issues with it. You know, it's fun. It's what I liked about it is it felt like kind of the sort of thing that Steven Soderbergh would do in his indie projects. It felt like a really crazy indie idea that they were throwing into this mega budget film. And, it didn't completely work, but at the same time, at least I felt like they were doing something that I hadn't seen before. And it's funny hearing them talk about it behind the scenes. This was like a major issue with the studio, and everybody was like concerned about, is this going to affect Julia Roberts as far as how people perceive her? And like they had to do all these back and forth like conversations to determine if this was something that would freak people out too much. So
I don't see that. I mean, did you find yourself freaked out?
No, but I the way that studio heads think sometimes, it just boggles my mind. It's like, these are the conversations they have. Like, is this going to ruin Julia Roberts' bankability? You know, it's just crazy. It's funny how people think.
Yeah, it is. But you know what's interesting? I actually had zero problem with the Julia Roberts idea. I think it actually works really well. And in fact, I think it's a gag that could have been funny until they sucked all of the oxygen of believability, all of the credibility, the credulity out of the sequence by introducing Bruce Willis. That is where the whole gag fails, because I have absolutely no shred of belief that Bruce Willis would see his close friend Julia Roberts being impersonated and not blurt out that's not her from the very beginning, that he would need to see her, which hand she's writing with, to lock that down is insanity. It's insanity. And as I understand it from the behind the scenes stuff, it was Julia Roberts' idea that, she should, Tess should run into somebody in the museum. Wouldn't that be funny? And I happen to know Bruce and he's here. We should do this with Bruce. That would be great. It'd be a great thing. it doesn't work for the movie in my opinion. It's where the entire gag breaks.
Yeah, I think that is a problem with it. It is a fun idea, and I love that Bruce Willis is in this movie because he was originally going to be Danny Ocean in the last movie, and it's fun seeing him pop up here. And the fact that he and Julia know each other, their kids know each other. Like, I love how all of that plays out. But yes, it does end up creating kind of a structural problem when he does that. And I also always have an issue with Saul all of a sudden popping up, because it's like he had been gone for so long. And it's like, he knew he was supposed to show up and like play this role. And it just seemed so, convenient that he appeared right at that particular moment.
And you know what's interesting? We talk about fan service a lot, and I think this was probably more star service than fan service. But if anything, because we had Bruce Willis and Julia Roberts playing themselves in The Player, like, this feels like a throwback that they wanted to do together for those sort of kind of historical reasons, and that's another reason I look at it just kind of.
Well, that's a stretch I never thought of.
Really?
Nope, never.
It's the first thing I thought. I was like, "Oh, here we go."
That's funny.
This is something they have to have thought of that.
Yeah, well, it's possible.
Anyhow.
So it's funny though, because so I'm assuming we haven't talked really much about the titles as far as this being Ocean's 12, meaning, hey, there's one, it's a sequel because the number went up one, and two, there's an extra person in the group, right?
Yeah.
And I'm assuming that Julia Roberts is that extra person because now she's helping them with their heist.
Okay.
Does that make sense? Is there somebody else who would be the 12?
You know what's funny? It makes sense to me. It makes sense to me. I am not one of those that has ever had a problem with the titles because I just haven't given it much thought. Like this, it felt like Ocean's 12, not because of the number of people, but because it's the movie after 11. Like Ocean's 11 was cute. Ocean's 12 was, I've just never counted.
Well, I think that they consistently have been trying to add an extra person on every time, because then when we go to Ocean's 8, it's 8 people. Like it's consistently something having to do with the number of people involved. And
okay,
and
so who
is
is
the 11, and then Julia Roberts is the extra person involved in the heist.
Okay,
that's
right.
My theory. Now, what's funny though is that so Saul doesn't come, so technically we're already down one, so it's 10. Frank gets arrested right away, so we're at 9. Yeah. Yen gets locked in a bag and shipped off, and then everybody gets arrested. So it's so funny, and
it's really Ocean's 3,
yeah,
or
it's like
3 and a
Ocean's
half
3 plus 1, right?
Yeah,
yeah. And so it's funny how it because you never actually have all 12 people involved in one heist at the same time. So
right.
But it's funny. I mean, and this goes, I think, to the complexities of writing a script in the world of Hollywood, where you have all of these stars who are all commanding attention and being pulled in many different directions, and you have 12 of them plus Andy Garcia, plus all of the other people that are involved in that on the fringes, like. You have like all of these people, and what happens is all of a sudden, as they're trying to build these schedules, somebody like Julia Roberts ends up pregnant. She's having twins, so they have to rework the script to accommodate that. Bernie Mac all of a sudden has another job that he has to go do, so they have to write him into jail so they can kind of free up his schedule for a big chunk of time. Same thing with Carl Reiner; they had to write him out for a long time, so he didn't pop up until the very end. And it's one of these things that I can't remember if it happens in 13 or not, but it's something that is a consistent element that I think is going to make it harder and harder as they build these projects with huge casts like this, is because they're going to have to keep reworking the script, and when they do that, that may affect the quality of what they're actually trying to do.
Well, it reminds me of the chaos that they went through to make the last season of Arrested Development for that very same reason, right? They shot everything out of crazy order, right? It was just chaos, and
where they focused each episode on a person as opposed to the group, right? Yeah,
based on schedule, not narrative, right? Which I think it caused the season to suffer, and I think this movie suffers. But I want to get to the script, because I feel like there's room for challenge in once again taking a script that was not written as an Ocean's movie and adapting it to become an Ocean's movie, and trying to shoehorn all these guys into it.
Yeah, the original script was Honor Among Thieves by Nolfi, George Nolfi, who stayed on to kind of adapt it into this world. It was a script that had been optioned, and it was a script about a thief, like a master thief who is challenged by another master thief who says that he's the best, and this guy has to, they set up this competition to prove who's really the better master thief, and that was kind of the crux of his story, and so they took that concept and morphed it into the Night Fox element of this one and moved it over to Europe, and they did a lot with it, and that's, I think, why this film ends up feeling so different than Ocean's 11, because they kind of pulled it from that, and that happens a number of times. We talked about that, I think, last with I want to say Die Hard 2,
yeah,
where it was a totally different story,
right?
And it can work, and sometimes the films can suffer. What I like about it is it gives that film a fresh feeling where it doesn't feel like the same story retreaded. And I think that is kind of an important element. However, it can be hard to kind of keep a consistent tone that really feels like it's connecting with the first one. And I feel like for the most part, they have the tone right. Yes. Here, but I do still feel it creates some issues.
I think the problem that they had, Andy, is that they tried to shoehorn this Terry Benedict angle into it, right? I mean, I think they tread too far from the Honor Among Thieves. Had they gotten rid of all of that nonsense about I want my money back, even though I just got my money from the insurance, they could have cut a half hour from the movie or embellished the Night Fox angle in a way that is ultimately really satisfying and doesn't feel like one story's getting short shrift. Because I love Cassell, and I think he's a fantastic talent, and I really would have loved to have seen more of him. And really to sort of flex their muscles around the competition. It could have been much more entertaining and funny if we didn't have so much of the baggage from Ocean's 11 that they felt like they had to shake loose.
Well, and I don't mind that. Like, I don't mind all the Terry Benedict stuff. I think it's kind of fun, and I love how that and all of this ends up kind of tying into 13 too. But here's a question for you relating to the story, just to, and again, it's a very convoluted story, but okay. So is the whole thing of them getting outed to Terry Benedict, by the Night Fox, all part of their plan?
Right, and that is that you're right, because we haven't talked through sort of all of the heist plans yet. But you're right, because when I'm going to say this wrong, I feel like, but at the very end, when they're going through explain how this all came to be, if it weren't for you lousy kids, their plan had to start. It feels like a week before the movie started.
Yeah, it's
right.
Well, it's confusing because Lamarck, Albert Finney, who's we find out is what's her name's father?
Yeah,
why am I blanking on her name?
Right,
Catherine Zeta-Jones. Yeah. Right. He's the dad, and so the whole thing kicks off because they are sitting around chatting. This is the scene we talked about. How the producer of the film ended up having all these cameos, and this is his chance right here, where Jerry Weintraub, he's having his cameo here. He's sitting on the boat telling Lamarck about this amazing heist and how these guys are the best master thieves in the world, and Lamarck doesn't say no. And that's what sets Toulour off, and
right.
So he tips off Benedict, and the whole thing kind of snowballs from there. So, but I don't think that
when does Danny and Rusty get involved?
Right, because I don't think that conversation was faked. Like, if to get Cassell to go spill the beans to Benedict. So my hunch is that all of that happened outside of the story, and that then when Benedict comes to them saying, "I want my money," I think that's when they went and talked to Lamarck and found all of this out, maybe? Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
And so then with the help of Lamarck, they set all of these plans in place. And they knew by that point, they must have known that Isabel was somehow involved. I don't know. And then they came up with this whole plan to, get the money to lure by doing this whole thing to pay off Benedict, so they still won, and get to Lamarck reunited with his daughter.
That means that the real heist was done well before the heist that we see them doing all the planning for. And what they're planning for, and this is what Soderbergh does really quite well in these movies, is leave out just the right bits of dialogue that would have happened, that would have set us off or let us understand exactly where we were on the timeline. That what we get is planning for the ruse, and we don't know we're in a ruse.
Yeah, it's, and that's something that I think is very consistent in these films, where we as the audience see, we see Toulour spying on them, but we don't realize that they are kind of also, they're completely aware of it. And the whole thing is a fantastic sting, right? I mean, it's just like the sting. The whole thing is just this big thing that they're doing. So
Right. And you realize, like, in the sequence between Basher and Scott Conn and, Linus, they're upset because all the guys have been arrested, but when you watch it knowing what they're upset about, it changes the tone of the movie. And I think this is one of the central areas of complaint, either you're frustrated that you've been tricked and it no longer has any of the sort of narrative weight that helps you care about what they're doing, because it doesn't really mean anything. They already have the egg, or you really like it because they, because it's such a complex and twisted kind of objective. And I generally like it. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that I really am in for.
Yeah, it is fun, but it is one of those things, and I can't remember what film we talked about recently, but it was one where, the people telling the story, it's like, would they act that way when they're on their own and not being watched? Are they still going to be acting as if they're being watched, And you kind of fall down that rabbit hole of how deep are these performances going that they're putting on. He brings in his mom. It turns into this whole hugely convoluted thing, and lucky that they're all good actors who can pull it off and not raise suspicion in some other way, because it gets very complicated.
Well, so was the arrest real? Because, Linus's mom comes to the rescue, and was that a real rescue, or was that plan as part of the plan all along?
That was part of the plan, I thought. Well, I don't know. See, that's where the
if
issues...
it was part of the plan, then that conversation that Linus has with his mom would not have gone the way it did in the car. Right? I mean, he was genuinely disturbed by her being there. Unless, once again, they've already set us up that we should be suspicious of everything that Linus is involved with.
Well, and that's a general struggle I end up having with this entire franchise, is it basically puts me on guard where everything that happens I'm suspicious of. Like, here's a perfect example. In this film, you have a scene where Isabel is in her car and stuck in traffic in Rome or wherever she is at this point in the film. And the camera looks behind the car, and you see a motorcyclist kind of cutting through traffic, and the motorcyclist comes right up next to her car window and stops next to her and stares through the window at her. I'm so suspicious. I'm like, who is this person? It's
Vincent Cassel. It's Toulour.
Is it Toulour?
Oh, it's Toulour.
How do you know that?
100%. Because I recognize his chin. It's totally Toulour.
How do you recognize his chin? He's completely covered in a mask. He's got his helmet on.
He's not. I'm going back to the scene right now.
And then he stops right next to her and then bikes off, only to reveal the egg poster behind her. And that was really the only reason that shot's in there, is for her to make the connection with the egg. It's not a character. I tell you, it is not a character in the film. It's some random motorbike guy that I become suspicious of because of the nature of these films. I don't buy anything that's happening in the movies because I think that everything is a con.
I totally hear you. I hear your suspicion. I really do. But I think it's troublesome either way. If I'm right and it's to lure, then what the hell is the point of him coming and looking at her through the window? Why is he there? If it's just a random guy, then it's a waste of a scene.
Yeah. Well, it's just to get her to see the egg, but and maybe it wasn't the best example if it was to lure, because it's like, the point is, these films, the nature of the con movies is they are designed to trick you. And in a good con movie, you're gonna think you're paying attention to a con, but in reality, there's another thing that's happening, and that was the actual con, and you kind of missed it because it's a good magician's trick where you're watching the left hand, but really the right hand was the thing doing the trick. But it gets to a point where there's so many hands up in the air with all of these films that you start going, oh, it's all a con. I'm not buying anything. Everything is something. Yeah. And it's a frustrating element of con films in general. And I think these films, there are so many cons going on because we keep seeing con after con after con that it is hard to buy into anything that happens. And we're certainly going to see that in 13, and we're certainly going to see that in 8.
Oh, yeah. Well, and the fact that the cons are coming from both sides. It's not just, that the fact that the Night Fox is conning Ocean's 11, or, I think so, or that Ocean's 11 ends up conning the Night Fox to pay off Benedict, but Isabel is conning everybody too. She's faking signatures, right? She's conning Ocean's 11, stealing the phone. It's left and right. And in the end, Rusty is doing the same thing that Danny did in the last movie. He's conning Ocean's 11 and conning Isabel to win her back.
And the audience, yeah.
Yeah, so everybody is conned.
Yeah. It's all a big Lamarck con by the time we get to the end.
It's a big Lamarck con, right.
So
and it's a Linus con. Everybody's conning Linus so that he can feel really good about himself.
Well, his mom sure was.
This whole movie is Lamarck conning everybody, right? It starts at the very beginning, and it ends with him convincing, I guess, himself and everybody else that, in fact, he is the greatest thief of all time.
You're right. Which I think the Ocean's team would agree with, but Toulour may not.
Well, maybe at the end he would. He was pretty upset.
Yeah.
I bet he was pretty upset at Lamarck. But then it gets back to, if you look at the film in that light, was it successful at what it was trying to do? And I say it's actually even worse.
Why is it worse?
Because it's less committal to that particular. It gives us. It doesn't set up Lamarck well enough throughout the film. It is so focused on the capers at hand, whatever's on screen, to actually keep front of mind, at least back of mind, that there is this sort of alter kind of narrative.
But it's the nature of these stories where you're getting conned, and I think by the time you get to the end, you see the con, and you're just like, okay, and I think that's kind of the nature of the story where, I don't know, I don't know if it's as much a problem as you're making it, but I don't think it's as clean as it
oh, believe me, Nolfi made it the problem, Andy. But that I think is part of the challenge, and I think the movie had a problem because people walked in thinking that this was going to be a George Clooney led movie like Ocean's 11 was, and it's not. And I think that is in fact one of the things that's really solid about the movie, that it keeps us guessing in terms of who is the center of importance in this film. And I think scene to scene, sequence to sequence, it holds together, on the strength of the characters and performances very well. I enjoy it. I still deeply enjoy watching these people on screen. So,
yeah, right.
Let's do the deep scene dive, Andy.
Let's do it.
All right, here we go. The scene is right around 38 minutes, and the premise is this. Isabel, she is arriving at the crime scene in Amsterdam. It flashes, her experience flashes back to Isabel and Rusty falling in love. Inside of that flashback, it goes to Rusty being chased and her seeing the police chasing Rusty. There is an enormous amount of flashing back, and I think there's some side flashing where we get to see Benedict getting the call from Toulouse, actually outing Ocean's 11, telling him where they are. It is there's a lot of flashing around in this sequence. Why is this our deep scene dive?
I think this is such a fun scene and just shows the smarts of Isabel as a detective that really gives her kind of center stage of like piecing this whole thing together, of how, she pieces together right away that she realizes there was a crossbow bolt in the wall, and she figures out how they did it, and that reminds her of Rusty and how she had told him about this heist where they raised the building, and so she figures that whole thing out. But then and she sees it, and I love it where she flashes back and sees basically the whole thing playing out, which of course is really how it played out. It's not like her imagination of it, but it's kind of fun to see it flashing back in her mind. And then in there, and then of course she has this whole thing with the Night Fox and how he conned them, and that is kind of that, I guess you'd call it a side flashback. It's so fun. It's just the way that we're jumping around from moment to moment, all within this space of this scene of Isabel examining this crime scene and piecing it all together and realizing the Night Fox was involved and Matsui was involved, and it makes for fascinating storytelling. And I love that Soderbergh has such an assured hand that makes scenes like this really work and just feel easy to get.
Oh God, absolutely. And so, like I say with great affection, this scene is peak Soderbergh in this movie. Right. I mean, the way he is able to play with time and take such liberties with time and still make it effective, the way he is able to play with age and hairstyles, right? The way that he's able to make those flashbacks actually make sense based on just how these characters look and how affectionate they are for one another. Again, he is here as Peter Andrews behind the camera. I love the way he holds the camera. This is a great handheld guy. Like watch the behind the scenes with him with the camera on his shoulder. It's hard to do, and for him to direct and shoot is I think a real testament to how talented he is. And this sequence really showcases so much of that.
Well, and he loves playing with the techniques. We talked about kind of the freeze frames and the crash zooms last time.
Absolutely.
But he plays with it even more here. And it's just fun to have all of those tools at use in a way where it doesn't feel like dated. Like there was a period where his zooms were really just dated. And I think he's found a way to do it very effectively. Like Kubrick is somebody else who uses his zooms very effectively. And I love that he continues to experiment with all of that.
The other thing that he does here, which I find really effective and efficient, is he tells the tale of their romance, I think, in like a 4-shot montage of them together as a couple, right? There's them eating ice cream, sitting on a bench. There's them, I think, in a museum, maybe sitting together close, and there's them dancing.
Dance scene.
God, that dance scene is fantastic, where it's so deeply red and they are isolated under a yellow light. I mean, it's just really beautiful. In that little sequence, and then the hard cut back to her looking wistfully at the safe, we get a sense of just how close she is. And that's why I don't know, maybe this scene is such a testament to why I just wanted it earlier. I wanted more of this part of the story. And I felt like this was the thing that could have really set the movie apart from the last one.
David Holmes, I think he's back for the music and does such a great job with the score here. He gives a nice European flair that has this great 60s, 70s European vibe. The music when they're romancing each other is just such amazing score here. It's just beautiful. The song selection throughout is fantastic too. But yeah, I mean, the score is just great. And then I love the little bit of score that we kind of discovered deep under her investigation.
Oh, it's so fantastic. I had never listened to it with headphones on, and I turned it up as we were preparing for the show, and here as she's kneeling. First of all, I should say she's kneeling and looking at a boot print, which is a nice callback to the opening sequence. So that was great. And then she starts going up the stairs, and if you listen very closely, you can hear this. The bass line is actually replaced by this sort of men's bass chorus, and it's just like whoa, 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 and it's so cool. It's just such fantastic texture to add the choral voice to that. It was very, very cool. Can I ask you a thing though about the this heist in particular? And maybe it's something I should celebrate because of efficiency, or maybe it's something that I should lament because it's a distraction. But this whole heist, they have to lift up the entire building in order to make a single crossbow shot.
Correct.
Do you find that nonsense, or do you like it, or do you not care about it at all?
I guess I don't care about it because it's just one of those things that I guess people do. I don't know. When your house is, it's just a weird thing and I guess I don't have enough understanding of building houses on water. The whole idea seems so strange to me anyway.
Because you don't have any water where you live.
Exactly. What is this water thing that you have?
Magical.
I only get it in bottles.
Still funny.
No, it's like watching the whole the final fight in Casino Royale or something when they're in Venice and the houses are coming down and crashing into the water, and it's like I just don't understand. Like, how are they building these houses in this water? I don't get it.
Why would they choose to do that?
Yeah, it's so strange to me. And so in Amsterdam, I didn't even realize that was a thing in Amsterdam, and here they are doing this whole thing with this house. And so I guess in the scheme of things, I'm like, okay, I'll buy into it in context of the story. I don't know if I fully understood it because it's like, okay, so they had to raise his house, but if they had to raise his house, couldn't they likewise have just like rappelled like 10 feet down the wall of the building they were on and just shoot the crossbow bolt from that point? Like, there were some elements to it that it seemed like I'm sure there were other ways to go about it, but I don't know. I guess I didn't worry too much about it.
Yeah. I mean, I just kept thinking, somebody should have just slung themselves over the side of the building and pretended to clean windows. Like, it was so overboard for me. I don't spend a whole lot of time thinking about it. There are a lot more things in this movie that I have issues with, but that one just seemed a little bit silly.
But it's just one of those weird things that it's just like, okay, well, that was that.
Yeah.
And it was a fun thing to kind of get another cameo in, when I'm going to blank on his name, who pops up as the homeowner, right? As Jarwin Crabbe, who's like, you see him in one shot, and it's when they're talking about how much of a shut-in he is, and that's it.
Right.
That's his one shot in the film.
That's all he's got.
Yeah.
Well, this sequence I think represents some of the best of the movie, and it is it's a shame it's surrounded by what it's surrounded by for some of it, but it just really resonates how good Soderbergh is at what he does.
There are elements of it that I think work. So and because it feels different, I end up walking out of this one still liking it more than I did the other one.
Did it do any good in award season, Andy?
Well, like you, most people didn't care for this one quite as much. It did have 3 wins, 8 other nominations, and 3 wins is, I guess, in quotes, because one of the wins was something called the Yoga Awards. I have no idea what those are. I looked online, I couldn't find it. But Brad Pitt won for Worst Foreign Actor, and it was for his work this year in both this and Troy. So that is, that's that win. Nothing too exciting, nothing to write home about. I'm going to see if I can figure out what these Yoga Awards are. But other than that, at the BET Comedy Awards, Don Cheadle and Bernie Mac were both nominated for Best Supporting Actor in a Comedy. But they both lost to Chris Rock for The Longest Yard, which I don't know why that surprises me, but it does.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then at the Costume Designers Guild Awards, Milena Canonero was nominated for Excellence in Contemporary Film. And I will say the costumes looked great in this. I thought Catherine Zeta-Jones looked so good every single time she was on screen. You know, everything she wore, her hair, her outfits, just her, she exuded just magic and everything. And I think a lot of that went to just kind of her clothes and just how she carried herself. But anyway, the Milena lost to The Life Aquatic with Steve Zissou, I guess, is just kind of a very kind of that quirky Wes Anderson type of thing happening in that one. So,
well, I am glad that this movie apparently did well enough to get the sequel, because I can't wait for next week. But give me some detail on the budget.
Yeah, Soderbergh's quirky little sequel here was definitely a bit more costly than its predecessor, perhaps because of its foreign locations. The film came in costing $110 million, which is about $139.7 million in today's dollars. It opened December 10th, 2004, opposite Blade Trinity, where it took the #1 spot, but just for a week. The movie went on to earn $125.5 million domestically and $237.5 million internationally, giving it an adjusted gross of $461 million. It leaves it with an adjusted profit per finished minute of almost $2.6 million, so it wasn't as successful as the first film, but still a financial success.
Hallelujah. Let's rank it.
Let's do it.
Head over to flickchart.com/thenextreel. You'll see all the movies we've talked about on this very show, or swipe over in your show notes, tap Flickchart, jump to this very movie and add it to your own list so we can see how it stacks up to ours. Andy?
All right, first up we have Ocean's 12 or Star Trek Beyond.
Star Trek Beyond.
Star Trek Beyond for me. Ocean's 12 or The Adventures of Baron Munchausen.
I'm going to go Munchausen, I think. But not hard.
They're both very problematic.
I'm telling you, if you say Oceans, I'll give it to you. I'm not going to fight you.
I guess I'll go Oceans.
Okay, you got it. Take it. Run with it.
All right, Ocean's 12 or Princess Mononoke.
Oh, Mononoke.
Yeah, Mononoke. Ocean's 12 or Detroit.
I'm going to say Detroit.
Ocean's 12 for me.
Let's do it. Ready?
Yep.
1, 2, 3. Paper. Scissors. I am crushed.
Ocean's 12 or The Bourne Legacy. Jeremy Renner's entry into the franchise.
I'm going to go with Bourne.
Ocean's 12 for me.
Yeah, I'll give it to you.
Ocean's 12 or La Vie en Rose.
Oh, Ocean's 12. Hands down.
Ocean's 12. Yep. Ocean's 12 or Sophie's Choice. Ocean's 12 for me.
Yeah, Ocean's 12.
Ocean's 12 or King's Row. I'd say Ocean's 12.
Ocean's 12.
All right, well, that lands Ocean's 12 at 226 on our chart.
Does that feel okay to you?
Like I said, this film on my personal chart is 35 spots ahead of Ocean's 11. It's at slot 1,000 out of almost. I'm at 3,999.
Oh, jeez. Okay.
Very excited. I'm debating like what's going to be number 4,000.
Oh my goodness.
I know these are sorts of things that I think about. But anyway, 35 slots ahead. It's behind Ocean's 11 on our chart here, but I blame that on Star Trek Beyond.
Well, for me, this movie, it fell when I re-ranked it this time around, and it fell to 441 out of 1,025, which, if I go by the algorithm, this should be a 3-star film on letterboxd.com/thenextreel. When I came into it, I was thinking it should be right around 2.5 stars. I like enough of the production, and I don't like enough of the narrative that it feels like a very middling movie. I'm actually okay at 3 stars. How does it hit you?
Is that 3 stars and a like?
Yeah, I would even give it a like.
I'm at 3.5 stars and a like, which is exactly what I gave Ocean's 11. So I'm pretty firm on that. I feel like it's in the right place there, and that's based on my ranking, that's where it should land anyway. So,
well, I deeply enjoyed Ocean's 11. This one is a disappointment only by comparison, and I think I sound probably more antagonistic when talking to you than I would about this movie to anybody else. But generally, I just like I like what he does to create this movie so much more than I like the script. I'm going to forgive an awful lot of the script here's the thing.
Do
enjoy the ride.
Yeah, he's a master filmmaker, and he knows how to make a fun film. And even when it's a problematic script, whether it's Ocean's 12 or, in my case, Ocean's 11, he still makes it a very fun ride. Yeah. And so I can still have fun with it, even though I have problems with it.
Absolutely. Where do we go from here? It should be fairly predictable.
Yeah, we're going to be jumping forward 3 years to Ocean's 13, which came out in 2007, the final of Soderbergh's trilogy.
Yes, I'm very excited about this one. I'm very excited about it, and I actually haven't quite finished it. I started watching it. I only have about 20 minutes left, and I just couldn't finish it. And so I can't wait to get back into it and talk about it with you next week.
Well, if you want to hear more of us, but you can't wait until next week's show, you can support us over on patreon.com/thenextreel, where you get access to our exclusive members-only weekend show, The Saturday Matinee. We talk about movie news and new trailers, plus we go head-to-head in our weekly challenge in which we put together lists of movies related in some way to the movie we're discussing that week. There are all sorts of other goodies too if you support us at different levels, so just head on over to patreon.com/thenextreel.
And you can learn more about us at thenextreel.com. Subscribe to the show in your favorite podcast app or follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at The Next Reel.
The Next Reel couldn't happen without the hard work of Steven Smart, who runs the Instagram program. Ben Lott runs all things on Twitter. And, of course, thanks to Eli Catlin, who graciously allows us to use his song Ragtime Instrumental as the theme to this show. You can find out more about Eli on his SoundCloud page.
When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.
Amazon giveth, Andy.
As Amazon always doeth.
And, since I'm right in the middle, but you said that I was too negative, and so I should do a 5-star because I leaned negative. So
that's right.
So I'll take that. So I went on the 5-star round, and in fact, this particular review, Andy, was written by Lamarck himself.
Whoa.
Yeah. I've watched this movie 12 times 10,000 equals love it. The Oceans is by far the favorite, and I think best of all of them. Great movie. Now, I don't know if you noticed that there's some significant math involved in this. We need to actually figure this out. 12, as we know, is 12, right? 12.
Right.
And if you actually do the math and multiply that out, in fact, Lamarck has watched this movie 120,000 times, and therefore loves it.
Well, that maybe is why he's the master thief, because he used this to figure it all out. Go, oh, this is what I need to do.
Perfect. Perfect.
Oh my.
What's yours? You went
so
south.
Funny. I went with a 1-star by Sid Dithers, who, I just thought this was kind of just a fun reference. The Cannonball Run of 2004. Do you get the feeling that these movies are only strung together from the cast's pranking and joshing sessions from Entertainment Tonight and Access Hollywood? Like the Cannonball Run and the abominable Charlie's Angels films, these movies look like they were far more fun to make than to actually watch.
You had me at Cannonball Run.
Right. I'm like, I saw that movie. I remember liking it.
Thanks, Amazon.
It's hard to believe that we've been having in-depth weekly conversations about movies since 2011.
You're telling me producing this show week after week requires a ton of work behind the scenes. If you'd like to help support our efforts, one easy way is by using our originals page when shopping for books and movies we've covered.
Just visit thenextreel.com/originals. Your purchases made through our links give us a small commission at no extra cost to you and allow us to keep having these great conversations.
I was so excited for our big Star Trek film franchise series this season. All those movies adapted from Gene Roddenberry's original 1960s TV show.
As a huge fan, I know that you geeked out over analyzing the adaptations.
Absolutely. From the motion picture to the Kelvin timeline films, seeing the Enterprise crews on the big screen was a dream come true.
Our list of source material isn't just all books and plays. We have the original series in our list of source material. You can rent the episodes to watch and enjoy, and support the show in the process.
For our Millennium Trilogy series, we covered films adapted from the original books that launched Lisbeth Salander, The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, The Girl Who Played with Fire, and The Girl Who Kicked the Hornet's Nest.
As much as I love Fincher's version, the original Swedish versions are the way to go. We also did our Die Hard series in season 7.
I can't believe Die Hard and Die Hard 2 were adaptations. 2 of the greatest action movies ever.
Well, one of them at least. The other's awfully fun, though. We revisited the classic Mary Poppins for our 1960s movie musical series. A spoonful of sugar always helps the medicine go down.
Old Boy was intense for our Park Chan-wook Vengeance trilogy, and East of Eden and Giant were highlights of our James Dean series.
And a fun time travel mind bender with Predestination to cap things off.
Find all the books behind these adaptations and more at thenextreel.com/originals.
Dive into the source material for your favorite movies. Check it out today, thenextreel.com/originals.